Good evening and welcome to the Illinois Symphony Orchestra's Sunday at Six Recital Series. I'm Executive Director Trevor Orthmann, and tonight we feature our second bassoonist, Ben Roidl-Ward. Our Sunday at Six performances are made possible through the generosity of the Landmark Automotive Group, Deborah and Daniel Brownstone, Dennis and Linda Steele, and Dr. Jerry Antonini. We invite you to stay online for our Coda Conversations discussion immediately following the performance and encourage questions from the audience through the chat feature on YouTube and Facebook Live. We have many upcoming performances and events, beginning with a lecture on conducting by our music director Ken Lam this Thursday, March 11th at 6 p.m. in collaboration with the UIS Music Department. Our virtual Around the Town next Saturday, March 13th at 7 p.m. featuring Schubert's Amazing Trout Quintet, co-presented by UIS Performing Arts Center. Our virtual Farm to Fork Chamber Orchestra concert featuring principal harpist Eleanor Kirk on Saturday, April 10th at 7 p.m. and our Spring Gala on Sunday, April 25th, beginning with our Sunday at 6 performance featuring flutist Amanda Pond. Please go to our website, ilsymphony.org, for more details about these events and further announcements about upcoming performances in May and June. I thank everyone for joining us this evening, and now over to our music director, Ken Lam.
Thanks, Trevor. Ben Roidl-Ward won our second bassoon audition and joined the ISO back in the fall of 2019. Prior to joining the ISO, Ben was a member of the Chicago Civic Orchestra for 3 seasons. He's currently a doctoral candidate at Northwestern University, and his other degrees were from Oberlin and Rice University. Now, this is a bit of an unusual recital because we just have one solo bassoon, no piano or any accompaniment. But I know from Ben that the repertoire for solo bassoon is actually quite extensive. I hope you enjoyed the recital, and we'll talk to Ben afterwards. Here's Ben.
Thank you, Ken, and thank you, Trevor, for that introduction. Hello, everyone. My name is Ben Roidl-Ward. I'm the second bassoonist of the Illinois Symphony, and I'm so excited to be sharing this music with you today. I have 4 solo pieces that I'm going to be playing for you. The first of them is the Fantasia No. 8 by Georg Philipp Telemann. Telemann was a flutist himself and wrote a great number of flute pieces, including this one. It's a piece that we bassoonists have stolen and rearranged to be able to play on our instrument. So it's been transposed down into a lower octave and into a different key. It takes place in 3 short movements. The first one is the Largo, which is a slow, somber introduction, and then the Spirituoso and the Allegro finish it out. What I love about Telemann is that in each of his pieces that I know, there are really interesting little surprises that arise, whether they're harmonic surprises, quick changes in register, or rhythmic surprises. And I think you'll hear some of those in each of these movements today. So this is the Fantasia No. 8 by Telemann. The next piece on my program is by the American composer George Pearl, who passed away in 2009. This is the Three Inventions for Solo Bassoon. This is a piece that I've had in my music library for a long time. I actually found it in a music giveaway my freshman year at Oberlin back in 2011. And I never found an opportunity to play it until I started preparing it for this recital. It's a really lovely little piece, which is also in 3 movements. And what I love most about the way that Pearl writes for the bassoon is that he takes these short collections of notes and seemingly observes them from every possible angle over the course of a movement. So it really seems as if he's playing with these little connections of notes, and in a way that I find really whimsical and exciting. So these are the Three Inventions for Solo Bassoon by George Pearl. Next on my program is a piece by the Australian composer Lisa Lim. This is Axis Mundi for solo bassoon. I had the great pleasure of working with Lisa in the summer of 2016 at the Spoleto Festival in Charleston when we gave the US premiere of her opera Tree of Codes. The Tree of Codes in this work, Axis Mundi, they share a lot of material in the bassoon part. The bassoon plays a really significant role in the opera, interacting with one of the characters on the stage extensively. And so when I knew that I would be going to Spoleto that summer to play this piece, I thought this was a great opportunity to also learn the solo version of it. And it's a piece that I've really fallen in love with and that I try to play whenever I can. Lisa in this piece takes advantage of a vast wealth of bassoon sonorities that you might not usually hear in the concert hall. Microtones, multiphonics, and several other effects. And I like to think about this as if all of the sonic capabilities of the bassoon were a giant iceberg. And the things that you usually hear in the concert hall, what we think of as standard playing, that's the tip of the iceberg that's jutting out above the water. And then underneath, there's this whole realm of sounds that are strange and unexpected and sometimes unpredictable that we don't often hear in the concert hall in a lot of the standard repertoire that we play in the Illinois Symphony, for example. And I think that the way that Lisa approaches this piece is that it dwells right at the surface of the water. It's constantly bobbing back and forth between the piece of the iceberg that you're used to seeing and then this really interesting, rich sound world that's right below it. And the way that she does it, I think, is actually quite brilliant in that she takes gestures that are familiar to the bassoonist, technically simple scales, and alters them by just removing one finger or adding one key. So for example, if I play a chromatic scale down from the open F to the low B flat, which is the lowest bassoon, sounds something like this. Now, if I do the same thing, but for each of those notes, I leave open the third finger of my left hand, this key here, you get a quite different result, like this. So you know, instead of having a linear relationship where each note follows the next in a predictable pattern, here there are sudden different sonorities that pop out seemingly out of nowhere. And it's based on these scales that Lisa builds this really remarkable piece. So this is Axis Mundi by Lisa Lin. So I have one more piece, or rather one more collection of pieces to share with you. Before I do, I just want to thank you so much for tuning in today. You know, it's been a very difficult year for all of us performers and all of us in general. And although it feels really strange to be playing a recital in my living room to my laptop, it's been a really wonderful opportunity for me to get to learn this new repertoire and to get to share it with you. So I want to thank you for being a part of it. And I'd like to thank the Illinois Symphony and Chet and Trevor and Ken for making this possible today. It's really been a joy for me so far. I also want to invite you to stick around after this next piece to ask any questions that you might have. You can put them into the chat. I'd love to hear your thoughts on some of these pieces. Any questions that you have about the pieces, the program, the bassoon, the Illinois Symphony, I think we'll be really happy to answer those. And so I have one last piece to share, and this is a selection of 3 solo waltzes by the Brazilian composer Francisco Mignone. And Mignone wrote a total of 16 of these waltzes, which I think are really beautifully expressive, exciting works for the bassoon. They're a real treasure in our solo repertoire, which, as Ken said, is more significant than some people might think, but still might not be as broad or as deep as some of the other woodwinds, let alone the string instruments, the pianists, the singers, and so on. So I've chosen my 3 very favorite Mignone waltzes for you today, and those will be concluding the program. Hope to chat with you afterwards. Thanks again for tuning in. Thank you.
Well done, Ben.
Thank you.
That's great. I'll let you settle and get the mic in the right place.
Hopefully, can you hear me okay now?
I think so. Yeah. Great. Well, that's actually quite a lot of playing in one go, right?
Yeah, it's a lot. You know, playing a solo recital really requires a lot of your read, of yourself, and so it's an endeavor. But it's been a really wonderful project for me to have. You know, to have something to be working towards that actually is a real performance. You know, in a time where so much is recorded or just not happening at all.
Yeah. So Ben, tell us about like. So I know you were asked to do this recital fairly recently as well. And so, how do you go about preparing for a solo recital like that? I assume you must have done many solo recitals.
Sure. I mean, you know, in every school that I've gone to, I've had to prepare a couple of solo recitals, and so Chet and I first talked about this in January, doing this recital. And for me, sort of the first phase after that, which is in many ways the most fun one, is I just pulled a whole bunch of music out of my shelves and I just started playing through things. You know, of the four pieces I played today, the only one I had ever played before was the Lisa Lim piece, the Axis Mundi. And so I thought of this as a great opportunity to learn some pieces that I didn't know yet that I had been wanting to play for some time. And so I spent a good deal of time, you know, trying some different pieces, finding ones I liked. And then from there on out, it really became a question of starting to get to know those pieces that I didn't know yet, right? You know, getting my fingers around them a little bit, understanding how they work. And then after that, I like to have a rather intensive period of learning a piece and then set it aside for a little bit, right? So that I have it in my fingers to a certain extent. I understand the piece. And then about a month before this recital, that's when I started really kind of getting in and preparing in earnest for the performance.
Well, that's really great. Now, Ben, you're sort of relatively new member of the orchestra. You joined in 19, and then like we didn't really have much of a season. I think I've seen you like once or twice or something.
Right, right.
And yeah, so I mean, I think lots of people watching, probably want to get to know you a little bit. So tell us about where you're from and how you got into the bassoon and your sort of journey.
Sure, sure. Well, I grew up in Tacoma, Washington, out on the West Coast, which is, just a absolutely amazing part of the country. I feel so lucky to have spent so many years there. I started playing bassoon in the sixth grade. I wanted to start in fifth grade, but my fingers couldn't reach the keys yet, so I had to wait a year. And so I studied for 7 years with Francine Peterson in the Seattle area. She was my first teacher, and really, in terms of figures who have influenced me, I owe her more than anyone else in terms of me being able to be a professional bassoonist today. After high school, I went to Oberlin for 4 years and studied with George Sakakini there, which was a really special time of my life. It's a really special place for me. I spent 2 years in Houston at Rice University studying with Ben Kamens. And then I came to Chicago in 2017, moved here to start in the Civic Orchestra and also to start my DMA up at Northwestern. And I'm finishing up that degree now. And I guess it's 4 years now that I've been in the area. And I absolutely love Chicago. It's really an amazing place to be making music.
Yeah. Oh, so because I was reading your resume, and I mean, you have played with a lot of big orchestras already, and you soloed with Seattle Symphony. Was that when you were younger?
Yeah, that was when I was in high school. It was a really amazing opportunity for me. I played the Vivaldi E minor concerto on one of their, they have these children's concerts that they do where they bus in kids from the Seattle public schools. And so I actually got to play it 5 times with the Seattle Symphony.
Wow.
It was, that was a really amazing experience for me. It's something I still, treasure.
That's really fantastic. I mean, I think a lot of people here maybe the first time that they're getting to know you. I can tell everyone for sure that whenever I mention Ben's name in front of bassoonists, they all put their hand in their like over their hearts, and they love you. I mean, everybody loves you.
Well, that's really nice to hear. That's nice. Yeah. It's a small world. It's a small community of bassoonists, and I feel so lucky at every school that I've been to be a part of a studio that are not only really inspiring colleagues, but that have also grown to be some of my closest friends. And it's just an amazing feeling to see so many of those friends playing in orchestras around the country and teaching at different schools, and it's a really special feeling. One of the nicest things about being a musician, I think.
That must be very interesting also, because whenever you have an audition, you probably see everyone that you know. And
Oh yeah.
so,
Oh
yeah.
yeah.
So that, oh, anyway, so clearly you love new music. In fact, why don't we go, we have a question. So why don't we answer
Great.
one of these questions? Let's see. Well, what brought you to choose these specific pieces? Really enjoy the second waltz.
Oh, I'm glad. Yeah, I love those Mignone waltzes. I guess I'll go backwards. The Mignone pieces, those are pieces that my former teacher, George Sakakini at Oberlin, plays a lot. And I first got to know them through hearing his performances and his recordings, and I fell in love with them there. I learned that the last piece that I played, the last waltz, with him, but I never performed it. And so I was thinking about putting together this recital, and I thought it's about time that I actually perform some of these waltzes that are so special to me. I kind of told the story of Lisa Lim's piece already, and the Pearl, like I said, that was something that's been sitting on my shelf for a long time, and I played through it, and I fell in love with the cleverness and the sense of humor that he brings to those gestures. And the Telemann, I really love Telemann. He wrote an F minor sonata for the bassoon, which I teach to almost all of my students when they're ready, late middle school or early high school students. And these flute fantasias are really just lovely pieces. This is the second one I've played. I learned number 2 when I was at Rice, and so I'm working my way towards playing all 12 of them.
It's really I really like your selections, actually, because the sort of newer pieces, they are of course new, but they're so different. And the Lim's piece, in particular, is very powerful. Just I did not know her music before. I knew of her opera because that was done here, at Spoleto.
Right.
But I wasn't around then. So I actually, as you were playing, went on her website and was checking some of her. Do you know other music by Lim?
Yeah, so I first got to know her music through that opera and through the solo piece. She has a number of really remarkable solo pieces, one for trumpet called Wild Winged One, which I really love, and some fragments of that also show up in the opera Tree of Codes. She also has a number of solo cello pieces that are really remarkable, and she recently came out with a CD of recent works that features this Axis Mundi, not me playing, but another bassoonist playing, and some of her recent ensemble works. And if anyone's interested in her music, I'd highly recommend checking out that album.
Yeah. Now, so what would you say to people who are maybe used to hearing the normal bassoon, the tip of the iceberg, as you put it, but who are a little bit scared of the new stuff? How did you get into new music?
Well, I first got into new music really when I was at Oberlin. I mean, Oberlin has a well-deserved reputation for being a really forward-thinking institution in terms of contemporary music. There's a lot of really interesting experimentation happening there in new compositions, in improvisation, in electronic music. And I started going to these concerts as a freshman and as a sophomore, and just kind of I walked out of there with my brain on fire. I was like, I've never heard music that sounds like this before. And then I learned that I could make music like this by collaborating with my classmates and working with my friends who were composers, or learning, to work with electronics, learning to improvise. And so I really got addicted to that at Oberlin. It opened up a whole new world for me. And everywhere that I've gone since then, in Houston and in Chicago, there's a really amazing experimental music scene. And so I felt really lucky to just keep having my horizons expanded.
That's really fantastic. Okay, Patricia Herman, who are your top 3 composers for bassoon pieces?
Oh, this is a good question. Okay, I've got 2 for sure. So I think my favorite piece of all time for the bassoon is the Saint-Saëns Bassoon Sonata. Camille Saint-Saëns was a French composer. It was written at the beginning of the 20th century. And this was one of the last pieces that he wrote. Actually, I think the Clarinet Sonata is the only piece that he wrote after the Bassoon Sonata. And that piece, it just, it uses the bassoon in such an amazing way, both in terms of its lyrical characteristics. Some of the really flashy technical stuff in that is really effective. And every time I play that piece, I fall in love with it again. So I would say Saint-Saëns is one. For me, Sofia Gubaidulina, the Russian composer, was a huge influence in learning contemporary music as well. She has 3 major pieces for the bassoon, the most significant of them being her concerto for bassoon and low strings. And that was a piece that I got to play with the Oberlin Contemporary Music Ensemble my senior year there. And that was a really transformative experience. And then if I can just point out a couple of different names, that I think there are a couple of composers who are doing really extraordinary stuff. Lisa Lim being one of them, Pierluigi Bellone, the Italian composer, being another, and then just a lot of young composers who are my age, who are colleagues. Clifton Goodry, who's an extraordinary bassoonist and composer as well. Peter Kramer, who's a really dear friend of mine. Luis Fernando Amaya, who's a colleague of mine from Northwestern, who I'm collaborating with on a piece right now, and so many others. I mean, I feel bad for not mentioning so many of my friends that I'm working with, but I think there's just a renaissance of really amazing music being created for the bassoon, and I'm excited to be here for it and to be a part of it.
That's really great. Now, I'm going to just extend that question a little bit. What about the symphonic repertoire? What are your favorite sort of symphonic pieces that, as a bassoonist, particularly love?
Yeah. Okay. So this is good. We bassoonists, we have the benefit of having really extraordinary solos from a number of Russian composers. First and foremost, I would say Stravinsky is someone who wrote for the bassoon like no one else did. Obviously the famous Rite of Spring, but also Firebird, the Octet, the Soldier's Tale. There's really just so much amazing Stravinsky bassoon writing. Tchaikovsky and Rimsky-Korsakov, of course, being other really prominent Russian composers. Some of my favorite pieces to play in orchestral settings are actually some of the earlier classical pieces that have a smaller orchestra. So, some of the later Mozart symphonies, some of the Haydn symphonies, those are just extraordinary to me, because the bassoon plays this chameleon role in the orchestra in those pieces that, sometimes we're playing the bass line along with the cellos and along with the basses. Sometimes we're supporting, the flute or the oboe. And then every now and then we get a little solo, we get to peek our head out a little bit. And playing repertoire like that, there's nothing that I enjoy more, I think, playing an orchestra than that kind of repertoire.
That's great. Hopefully, we'll get back to a normal season very, very soon, and we'll see you very, very soon. Now, on a sort of more, hang on, we have another. I'm loving this music. I also love the art on the wall and the mesmerizing. The shadow was great. I have to say that was a really good touch. Can you tell us a little bit about the artwork on the wall?
Yes, thank you for asking. So I'm reversed, so I'm messing up. So this is a piece called Ice Divide, which is painted by my dear friend and colleague Connie Volk. She's an extraordinary flutist. She's the flutist of Ensemble Dal Niente here in Chicago, and she's also an incredible artist. And this was a piece that I commissioned her to paint for my wife for her birthday last year. So it's a really, really special piece for us. I would really highly suggest checking out some of her artwork, and of course her flute playing as well. We actually have another piece of hers around the corner too.
What? Tell us her name again.
Her name is Constance Volk, Volk.
Okay, well that's really great. Now, so just on a more personal, and I asked this for all the musicians who play the Sunday at 6. What do you do for fun, and what have you been doing, during the pandemic?
Oh yeah, good question. For fun, and when I'm not playing music, I'm a huge soccer fan. I love playing soccer. I love watching soccer. I watch the German Bundesliga almost religiously. I'm also, a product of the Pacific Northwest. I love the great outdoors, backpacking and kayaking and hiking. And my wife is from Vancouver. I was lucky enough to spend the summer with her up there, and we went on some really extraordinary backpacking trips up there. There's nothing to kind of refresh your mind, body, and soul quite as much as getting out there like that. And in terms of the pandemic, I mean, it's been a really hard time for me, and I think for everyone. So much work has disappeared, and it's been really hard to find any kind of sense of normalcy. I'm grateful for things like this, and I'm still able to teach online a lot, which gives me some kind of consistency and some kind of routine. But it has been really hard, in many ways. I've been cooking a lot more, which is maybe the one good thing that has happened. Although my waistline has filled out a little bit as a result too. But that's been a nice byproduct, and a nice thing to spend time with.
That's really great, Ben. We have to compare notes sometime because I have close family in Tacoma.
Oh, no way!
Yeah, so I that's one of the U.S. cities I've been to multiple times.
Wow, it's a small world.
It's a very small world. Yeah, and of course, I guess from Tacoma to Vancouver, it's just a very short drive.
Yeah, it's not bad. It's not bad at all. And that there's no part of the country that compares to the Pacific Northwest for me. I mean, I'm biased, of course, but it's just such an extraordinary part of the country. And Tacoma is a really wonderful city. Of course, it's growing in strange ways now, and a lot of condos popping up all over the place. But it's still a place that's really near and dear to my heart.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you for this wonderful recital. We love your personality as well. I think this has been a real treat. You're a fantastic bassoonist. Really, I really mean it. I mean, it's those are just some very, very nice playing. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Ken. Thank you for having me, and hope we can get back into the concert hall together soon.
Yeah. So for everyone, the next event is a talk that I'm going to give on Thursday in collaboration with the Guild, the ISO Guild of Springfield, and also UIS. I'm going to be talking about conductors and how they get things out of their orchestra. Whether there are many different kinds of conductors, some meaner than others. So I'm going to show you some examples, and we're going to talk about them. And hopefully, Ben, we will see you before September. It is still our hope that we will have something in May and June, pandemic permitting. But for now, on behalf of Trevor and Chad and myself and everyone at the ISO, thank you so much, everyone, for watching. Thank you, Ben, for your artistry, and we'll see you very soon, hopefully.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.